A safe trip begins with TRIP. Take a road trip with your family, get there safely. Do your trip checks. Drop up on island floor. Or rest every 2 hours to ice. Time pressure and tread. Prepare for the weather. A safe trip begins with TRIP.
Right now, and you're looking at a Labour government, and we just, in my last hour, those of you who are listening to it, I had Steve Wright here, who is the Fire Brigade's union boss, and he was talking about and lamenting the fact that the Labour government really needs to do much more on redistribution and redistributive policies. And he was, I guess, sounding quite disappointed by this. And if you're a Labour Party long-term supporter, party member, activist, when you look at the current political scene here on the left, what do you think? What do you see when you look at the Labour Party institution? And we know what's going to be happening with the budget. It's all been trailed, and we're going to see what happens on November the 26th. Do you want some sort of massive redistribution of the kind that Mamdani is going to try and pull off in New York? Now, whether he does or not, it's a separate issue, because it's not within his control. And one of the things that I think is going to become very clear very quickly is that if he wants to deliver on his spending priorities, and those include tax increases, he can't do it without the state legislature's approval in Albany. And what we know is that the new state governor, Kathy Hochul, has said she will not support a tax increase on the most wealthy, arguing she doesn't want business leaders leading the state. So there might be some real tough stuff and a rude awakening that Mamdani has to deal with. But slightly different to what we have in the UK, because we do actually have a Labour government in situ, in power, with a majority of 150-odd Labour MPs. Now, if they wanted to be radical, they could. And if you're looking at it as a voter, as someone who perhaps voted for them in the last election, a long-term Labour activist, as someone who looks at it now and feels very disappointed that they're not being radical enough, who do you think could emerge to actually take on the mantle of Mamdani-type figure in the UK? Is there such a figure? Is it Zach Polansky, who's coming out with some interesting stuff around economic reforms, redistribution, then they're trying to move beyond just the green? Is it a Jeremy Corbyn or a Zora? Because Jeremy Corbyn had his chance and he completely blew it. Because one thing is having radical ideas, another thing is actually being able to communicate effectively, and the third thing is being able to deliver them without looking completely cack-handed and lacking control of your party, and then having this stench of anti-Semitism around it. And also, Jeremy Corbyn's anti-Semitic, but he did have this inquiry that was conducted by the Equality and Human Rights Commission that banged his party to rights under his leadership. So who is this figure who's going to come, a Zora Mamdani figure in the UK? Because I personally I think what Mamdani's done is quite fascinating. Now, having said that, it's very interesting that Heather McDonald here, in the Spectators not exactly going to be fans of Mamdani, let's be frank about it. But she says this: William F. Buckley Jr. once quipped that he would rather be governed by the first 2,000 names in the Boston phone book than by the Harvard faculty. New York City is about to be governed by the Columbia University student body, a city that used to think of itself as grown up, has just elected a mayor who seems the very embodiment of the American college student, uninformed, entitled and self-important, enjoying a regal quality of life that depends parasitically upon civilization, about which he knows nothing, yet for which he has nothing but school. Not exactly very charitable. I think maybe she's alluding to his views on Palestine. I have no idea. Now, if you look at Zora Mamdani's policy ideas, let me just outline them for you. At the top level, they include a plan to create New York City's first universal childcare program, making city buses free, freezing the rent for 1 million rents, stabilised tenants in the city, and also taxing the city's wealthiest residents.
That's so close.
On whether you think a Zora Mamdani figure would be electable in Britain. If so, who is it going to be? Where are they going to come from? 0345 667 973. Malcolm and Wigan in Greater Manchester. Good evening.
Good evening, Mark.
is likely to come from the Greater Manchester area.
Well, he needs to be elected first, Malcolm.
Pardon, sorry?
He needs to get into Parliament first, doesn't he?
I'm not talking about Andy Byrne.
Oh, go on.
Rebecca Long Bailey is the MP for Salford who stood against Andy Byrne. So against Keir Starmer, and has a far more radical. Now also, this deputy leader who's just been elected, I don't even know her name, but I know she's from Greater Manchester, and then there's Andy Burnham. So there's three potential alternative
Lucy Powell, that's it.
That's it, Lucy Powell, yeah, okay. So I think that we need a northerner in charge. I think that these southerners in the Remain supporting losing parts of the country, i.e. the South East, have had their chance. And they've messed up.
How have they messed up? How have they messed up?
Well, what they've done is they've made the country, they've dragged our country into a disastrous war with Ukraine, for a start, which they didn't need to do, it could have been peaceful. Damaged our relationship with the dominant superpower, which is Russia. They've messed up in terms of supporting Israel's genocide, which does not do these pro-Palestinian.
Well, you know, Malcolm, I have to say that Israel would refute the term genocide, but, you know, go on.
Yeah, although, of course, the RCC... So, they've messed up in all sorts of different ways. They've got an equal society, and it doesn't do its Zoom's Act, Johnson, or Liz Truss on the social failure, or Keir Starmer. They all much the same hymn sheet, and we need a change of direction.
Okay, Malcolm, would you mind, because, sorry, I got you a call by name, forgive me, I was so carried away with my monologue of Mandani, I wasn't into my board, so forgive me. I need to go to a news break, but can you stay on, because I want to unpick some of the stuff that you've said in some detail, so if you can stay with me for 3 minutes, I'll come back to you in a second. Is that all right, Malcolm?
That's fine, yeah.
Great, good. Stick on the line then. So, I'm going to get going with Malcolm on this in a few moments, because I think he raises some important points, and I want to really get to the bottom of why he thinks that the Greater Manchester area is the new hotbed of left-wing talent pool and radicalism that we need in this country. We'll explore that in a minute. Would a Zoran Mandani, the mayor-elect of New York that has just won his election, be electable, that kind of figure, in Britain? 045-606-0973, listen to Ali Maraj, Infinite Indale, 931 News Headlines, Darryl Jones.
2 wrongly freed prisoners are missing, with one not reported to police for 6 days. Both are being held HMP Wandsworth in South London. Neither are asylum seekers. Rescue crews have been dealing with a major incident after flooding hit parts of South Wales. The major incident was declared at a retirement complex in Whitland in Carmarthenshire in the early hours of this morning. The father of the Southport killer says he's desperately sorry for failing to stop his son's escalating violence. Alphonse Ricabana has been given evidence of the inquiry into the murders of 3 little girls at a dance class last year. LBC patchy rain in the north and west tonight, dry and clear elsewhere, breezy with a low of 10 degrees.
This is LBC.
Did you know HGVs have 4 zones of limited vision around them? If you're in one of these areas, you may not be seen by the driver. These 4 limited vision zones are in front, behind, and at both sides of the HGV. So when you're driving around a HGV, don't linger around them, because they may not notice you're there. Know the HGV zones. National highways.
A message from TFL. I saw Alicia's photo in my newsfeed. All I can think of is her family. How they're getting on. If they're getting on. I didn't look when I pulled out, and she never made it home. Sounds crazy, but it felt like a motorbike came out of nowhere. And I know the truth. I didn't look again.
Drivers, take another look, not a laugh. For the Mayor of London and TFL, every journey matters.
They did it again. Flower instead of flowers on my birthday. And 95 minutes late.
hard to leave when you've shared so much. Postcode, your gluten intolerance. Then I saw it. 25% off your first Ocado shop. Plus, free delivery. And I just knew I'd found the online supermarket of my dreams. Ocado, life delivered. Geographical restrictions. Min spend £60. Max saving £20. Charges and Christmas restrictions apply. New customers only. Terms at Ocado.
Ali Mirage.
Media casa, media jump over a bar.
60600973.
Ali Mirage on LBC 934. We're talking about this seismic victory for Zoran Namdani, this arch left winger insurgent in New York. Would a Zoran Namdani type figure be electable in 04560600973? Text 84850. I'm particularly interested in hearing from you. If you are a Labour activist or supporter, what do you think this could happen? If so, where from? If you're disappointed, and if you're not someone who's left-wing inclined, are you relieved that this could never happen here, or are you actually fearful that, given the volatility in the political system at the moment, that it could? Malcolm, I'll come to your call in a moment. 0345 6060 973, by the way, if you want the number. Guy has texted in this. Ali, yes, a Mamdani character could be elected in the UK. Equally, someone who is conversely on the hard right, like he is on the hard left, could get elected as well. Many people, and particularly those in their 20s and 30s, have lost faith with traditional parties, and they are desperate for something different. That's why the Greens and Reform are polling so well, particularly with the young. People feel that the established parties have not given them the same opportunities in the last 20 years as they had previously, and simply any alternative, particularly where you have an articulate and charismatic character, has to have a chance, says Guy. Malcolm, your thoughts on that, and more broadly, why you think Greater Manchester and Rebecca Long-Bailey is going to be the answer to the problem that you're trying to see solved?
Well, I mean, the point is that she did stand against Sir Keir, and Sir Keir adopted some very radical policies to become the Labour leader. So he's misled the country in a sense, and the party.
This was not my intentions at all.
I mean, for example, let's mention tuition, which a lot of young people, and myself indeed, would like to see abolished for universities. Sir Keir was elected on to do that, and yet he completely
the next 10 seconds.
There's plenty of other things that he promised, which, you could go to the list. Now, Rebecca Long-Bailey forced him to make those promises. If she hadn't stood against him, then he would have adopted possibly some different tactics, I don't know. But the guy is basically false. He promises in the sense that he makes promises in order to become the leader of the country, claiming to offer an alternative, and yet he hasn't done that. He's continued with the same failed policies, particularly in regard to his addiction to. It's almost like his day job is going to see the crowd, and his part-time job is trying to look after this country.
Okay, Malcolm, let me be a bit pointed, if you don't mind, because you're making some interesting points. You're talking about Rebecca Long-Bailey. You're talking about the fact that Starmer stood on a bunch of policies which you then sort of reneged upon and has moved in more a centrist direction, having secured the leadership. I'll give you some Green Party policies. Introduce a wealth tax, nationalise water companies, legalise drug use.
Well, I would disagree with legalising drug use because, for example, my belief, which is based on some scientific evidence, because I am a scientist, but I was a professor of medicine, is that pot creates low spin alcohols, and that's one of the problems. So I disagree with that. But as far as nationalising water, obviously that should be done. Now, nationalisation of dairies and stuff, I'm sure Rebecca think the same. I don't think that the Greens are particularly clear on the environmental damage which has been done, for example, by the Ukraine war. What is the Green Party position?
Okay. But do you think, therefore, because Malcolm, if you're going for Rebecca Long-Bailey, this is it.
I'm saying that we've got 3 potential prime ministers in Greater Manchester, and I think that Lisa Nandy is also
But you see, okay, but this is fascinating. But this is fascinating because Michael Chesham, the left-wing activist, just a few moments ago, was saying that he could not see someone coming up through the traditional Labour Party structures because effectively it just wouldn't happen. You need almost someone completely outside the main body politic, if you like, as an insurgent to come and shake this whole thing up, whether that's your party with Corbyn and Sultana or someone we've never heard of, or maybe Polanski, I don't know. But Malcolm, you seem to still have some faith that through the traditional system, someone could emerge.
Well, I mean, Jeremy Corbyn himself became leader
That is true.
of the Labour Party.
That is true.
As he, despite the efforts of many people within the Blairite bunch of the Labour.
That is true. That is true.
That could happen again.
It could happen again. We shall see.
I think that Starmer himself is basically toast. He's lost it. As the policies are useless now. Everyone can see it, apart from a tiny remnant of supporters in the media and amongst Labour MPs. But a lot of Labour MPs...
Still got 4 years to go, Malcolm. Still got 4 years to go.
No, he hasn't. He's got until he's toppled as leader of the...
Well, now that's going to be very interesting, and let's see what happens if and when that occurs. Malcolm, thank you very much indeed for your analysis, which is very thorough. Yusuf in Sheffield, good evening.
Hi, good evening. I've been following the mayoral elections and the round of and everything that's been happening in New York quite intensely. And well, like a lot of people, I had not heard of Mamdani a few months ago. And I think there's something quite important there because I think what's happening is that the shift that we're seeing in politics is that people are more inclined now to go to of hope and optimism as opposed to politics of fear and austerity and things like that. And I think having Mamdani winning kind of shows of the shift and what the public is actually wanting. Politics of progression, of vision, and of investing in people. The ones who do their countries, societies, for them to invest in. And I think I think Zach Polanski is quite a similar candidate. I think that he's people that he talks to show the people a bit of a vision of hope and he's talking to the masses of people who are actually struggling and going through life as opposed to a very small minority of people. And I think a lot of people are more inclined to those kind of politics of hope. And you know what? I wasn't even sure seeing him now coming on the rise of the right, speedily with the polls. And this shows exactly what a British public are really wanting from all of that. So I think having Mamdani coming in will be a good thing. We should organise that. We're not living in a binary system.
Okay, very good. Yusuf, let me just put this to you. Stefan's texted in saying this. And the extreme left want a policy to enable more distribution. And unfortunately, they never think about how to create what it is they want to distribute. Hence, they never succeed, despite having had numerous chances in power before. So, Yusuf, your thoughts on that? Because ultimately, you need to grow the economy if you're going to redistribute something, right? It can't just be about nationalising stuff and whatever else, because we know that we've got tons of debt here. So even if they're going to come out with these radical policies, they have to be sensible and deliverable. Otherwise, people are going to lose faith and we're in a downward spiral of lack of hope and trust.
No, I absolutely agree with you. I think any of the policies that do come forward or are put forward to the public should be ones that are achievable.
Yes.
But something that can actually implement, when implemented, can actually improve society, improve the quality of life of people, and the economy as well. So it has to be a very fine balance. I think in politics now we're going towards extremes that we will do this, we will do that.
But Yusuf, that's interesting though. That's interesting. But if you look at Mamdani, the kind of thing he's talking about universal childcare, free, buses free, rent stabilised. Rent control. Rent controls. Right. A lot of analysts will tell you as well. You know this as well as I do. That that will have a lot of unintended consequences of actually putting up rents because fewer landlords will be there, the supply will go down. Actually, you will end up having a perverse outcome of that. The rents will actually go up, and the very people who are trying to support. So all of this stuff he's coming out with, it's going to be very interesting now to see if he can actually deliver it by raising taxes on the wealthy, because there's no guarantee of that, and B, whether it's actually going to be workable in practice.
It's going to be interesting to see how his policies and how his strategies actually work. Now, the thing is, it is a lot easier said than done. That's the reason why I was saying it has to be achievable. It has to keep the hope going. It can't just be kind of just down the line. And I think his history about kind of wiping out a lot of debts, helping with the taxi drivers over there, the cab drivers and stuff. I think he's done some positive things. It's just taken some time, but I mean, I'm quite hopeful to see where he brings it. Just being consistent.
Okay, Yusuf, I want to ask you something else because we've talked a little bit about the actual policy platform, and you're saying it needs to be sensible and achievable, and I agree with you. Let's just focus on the pure message discipline and the way he delivers his message. I mean, he's a brilliant speaker, very, very articulate, very eloquent, and passionate about what he says. I mean, he can really, really stir up a crowd. When you look at the British political landscape, and you look at the people like right who we can name on this show, really stands out to you.
I think the only one that really stands out to me with that level of charisma, I would say for time would be that Glasgow people. Some people might not agree with that and stuff, but I think, he speaks to the people, he speaks to the crowd, he obviously got a vision, but I think he's quite straight to the point and listen to some of the answers he gives to the questions. And he's not so I think that is quite similar in that regard. And I think this is what we want to do, to change some of the views
I think that's right.
and give it a different
we haven't really touched on the foreign policy part, which is quite interesting for a mayoral candidate to talk so much about foreign policy. I know that Steve Khan's done it a little bit in the past, and so did Ken Livingstone. But Zoran Mamdani made a big thing about his support for the Palestinian cause. How do you feel about that he was so clear about it, unequivocal about it, in a city like New York? It's quite fascinating that he took that stance and in part paid off for it, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is that he took that stance. I think actually debated with him for the where they were asking him these type of questions as well. And I think one thing that I actually got from it was, even though he was talking about Palestinian people, a lot of his focus was on the people of New York, which is exactly what and I think when people were asking further questions, slavery questions, they were saying so they didn't feel like New York was the centre of their actual reason to becoming there. And that's one thing I resonated with. I believe in the people of New York, and I think that's really what someone represents your state and does speak about so yeah, I mean, him talking about Palestine, I'm not sure what he's talking about in the situation, but certainly what that was the fact that he was talking about the people of New York, helping them improve the quality of life. So I think that's great.
Thank you. Yusuf, excellent call. Very good to speak to you. Thank you for picking up the phone. Now, we've got a text in here saying this. Yes, I think there could most definitely be a swing to the left with Zach. The under 40s are sick to death of the struggle that other generations never had to endure. They are getting older and older with very little. So a big swing to the left would be good. Look, whether you like Mamdani or not, at least he's coming out with some pretty radical stuff, which he's got a massive mandate for. Whether he can deliver or not, we'll see. But at least he's won the mandate and his message was clear. Don't really hear much of that apart from maybe the Greens and maybe your party if they can ever get their act together and name their party and not fall out for a week. Maybe we'll find out, but I'm not holding my breath. Would a Zoran Mamdani be electable in Britain? 0345 6067 973 text 845 948.
On LBC, Ben Kentish. Prince Harry's revealed what makes him proud to be British, but what about you? Talk about that a little later. One thing that won't put anybody's listening is the state of just the latest shambles up 10. Ben Kentish.
Listen on our free Global Player app or our new LBC app.
Private healthcare sounds pricey. At Bennington Health, it's less than £16 per person per month just for GP calls. Get your 24/7 GP helpline, physio, diagnostics, and more. And tell me all about my medical history. No medical questionnaires or hidden charges. We like to call it healthcare done different. Spot on. Bennington Healthcare done different. Great for some services, T&Cs apply. Selected surgical procedures after 6 months, 24 in Northern Ireland, UK, and visit Bennington.co.uk.
Calling all Black Cab drivers. Let's talk about those quieter times when your meter's sitting idle and those journeys when you're coming back empty. Why not consider Uber? They can give your meter a boost just when you need it. Join close to 1,000 Black Cab drivers already on Uber and gain access to millions of passengers at the touch of a button. Black Cabs on Uber are priced by your meter, and the service fee will be no more than 5% until the end of 2025. Turn downtime into prime time. Go to uber.com/blackcabs to start earning today. Terms and conditions apply.
How's the business going? We're busier than ever, but struggling to get the staff we need. Recruiting can be such a distraction. We gave Job Centre Plus a try, and they've really helped us out. It was dead easy. We got our own employer advisor, Julie, who helped advertise our jobs, shortlisted candidates for us, and let us interview at the Job Centre. We've hired some great people, and Job Centre Plus really took the hassle out of it, and there was no fee. Brilliant. That's straight on my to-do list.
Find out more at business.gov.uk/recruits. Eligibility criteria apply.
Have you ever wondered what a sandwich sounds like?
Not much to it, is there? Unless, of course, it's a Walker's sandwich. That is good. Now that's what a sarnie should sound like. Go all crisp in with Walker's. Delicious.
This is LBC. Message Ali Mirage on WhatsApp now. 0345 60 973.
Ali Mirage on LBC 950. Would Zoran Mamdani be electable in Britain? This is the New Yorker mayor-elect who's just won this stonking majority. 0345 60 973. Text 84850. Simon, I'll come to your call in a moment. My friend, in New York, one of my dearest friends from school, he just texted me. He lives there. He's been living there for like 25 years. We never got him back when he went to go and work for a major financial institution. He says this: which is break from the traditional shackles of the party by using a populist approach. The same approach worked using a groundswell movement in social media. The message is starkly different, though seen as the approach to counter Trump style, since the traditional approach doesn't work at all. So it's basically using the tools of populism in a way that Trump did to actually secure a victory with a left-wing agenda. Very, very interesting. Would someone like that win in the UK? 0345 667 Simon in Southampton. Good evening.
Good evening. I am extremely and I want to tell you why. But before I do, I'm a bit disappointed in you, Ali, if I'm honest.
Go on.
Because your previous caller, Malcolm, made 3 Kremlin talking points, and you just brushed over all of them. You didn't pick up on it.
Sorry, which one?
I've heard him before, and the one thing that he says that really strikes at me like an arrow through my heart is that Zelensky is a court jester in Ukraine.
Zelensky has a conversation today.
When you were talking to Malcolm, the Russian apologist, he...
About Russia.
Don't get me wrong, there was a few things that I actually did agree with him. His stance on Ukraine is disgusting. I would expect better.
But he wasn't talking about Ukraine this evening.
Listen back, Ali, I'm not going to... Listen back to it. There were 3 things he said where he spouted Kremlin propaganda, and you didn't pick up on it. And you obviously didn't, because you're saying it didn't happen now.
I didn't hear him talk about Zelensky. Maybe I didn't hear it. Sorry, go on, Simon.
I do want to make my point about...
Go on, make your point. Go on.
But Zelensky is a hero. He's not...
Some people might have a different view, frankly, to you, Simon, on that point.
Well, that's all right. They're wrong. Simple.
You might think they're wrong. I actually, if you want to go down that road, we can do it another time.
Well, we know your thoughts.
Yeah, we know my thoughts, and you'll call me a Putin apologist. But when there's a land for deal, Simon. You'll be eating your words. Go on.
Na jaribu tu kuimagine uko unapita hapa alafu ya na hiyo si level
Get to the point on this, Simon. Come on.
Living off this right-wing nightmare for all of my life, and there is a left-wing movement that is growing, and finally someone has broken through. Now, here's the thing. If it doesn't work, then I'm quite happy, because I'm quite happy to hold my hands up when I've made a mistake and admit it. But if it doesn't work, then obviously it didn't work. But if it does work, and it's down to him now to make it work, then there is no excuse whatsoever for other Western capitals and governments to adopt the same kind of policy. So what we have here is a possibility that Mandani will become a historical figure, because he will be the catalyst that turns people around away from this right-wing narrative, which is getting worse and more extreme.
Okay.
And capitalism in itself is a good thing.
Okay.
But it should have been done differently. It should be controlled. And don't get me wrong, I don't care if anybody is a billionaire or super rich.
Well, he does.
I don't care.
He's going to tax them all.
Well, hang on, because just because he's from my side of things doesn't mean I agree with everything he says.
That's good.
But I don't care if there are rich people in this world. Good luck to them. But if it's at the expense of the poor, if it's at the expense of people who can't live day to day, that's different. So you can be rich, but we all must be able to live as well.
I understand that point. Simon, tell me this. Cast your mind back to Obama. When Obama came in, were you as hopeful that he could achieve massive change? Because he struggled with Medicare and didn't really understand how Senate politics worked and how the House worked to get his stuff through, and just basically was not particularly impressive in terms of his record as a president. Decent guy, lack of delivery.
I can't really answer your question, and I'll tell you why. I did not become politically engaged until the Brexit referendum. I didn't know who I was or what I stood for, and it was only because of right-wingers that forced me into making encouraged me into making choices that were against my interests. I became politically engaged. But Obama is a very nice, decent man. And I tell you what, that's a good start. That's a good start.
Yeah, but utterly ineffectual.
I don't care. Ali, right? Where are we as a species if we don't have decency, humanity and basics to start from?
I get that
then
point,
you've got
Simon.
Trump is a swamp-crawling creature.
Delivering for his people, Simon. Delivering for his voters.
You're never going to get any decency and any goodness from somebody that doesn't have the decency.
Delivering for his voters, Simon, on immigration control at the border.
Yes, he is. Have you seen it? What about the No Kings
Yes, he is, sir. Yes, he is, sir.
What about the No Kings protest? What do you think happened last night? Ali, people are waking up. People out there are just like, we don't know. But when they find out, my God, it makes them act.
Why is it so difficult, sir, for people who detest Donald Trump to just accept the fact that with his hardcore policies towards illegal migrants across the Mexican border, he's actually now having zero migration?
Because it doesn't need to be that extreme.
Well,
you're
it does,
talking about,
it's actually
you're talking about one policy, right? And when you say the word Donald Trump to me, I don't hear the word Donald Trump. I hear the most dangerous man on the planet.
Perhaps, if we actually adopted a policy of being a little bit tougher in that direction, we wouldn't have 50,000, 45,000 people a year coming in small boats and paying people smugglers to come to this country. Maybe that would happen. I don't know.
Perhaps we should give them legal routes.
Okay, so Simon, back to the question. Who do you think in this country, given the fact that you're giving Mandani the benefit of the doubt or encouraged by him, who do you think here could be that kind of thing?
Well, I'm watching Zach Pelosi at the moment.
Okay.
For a change, we have someone who's actually prepared to open their mouth and say the things that need to be said. I'm not saying that that's a shoe-in, but there's parts of his character that I don't walk to, but the fact is it's now possible. And I'll tell you what, if it was 20 years ago, I'd put myself out there, right? Because
you're not going to tussle.
it's a bit late now, but All I'm going to say is the door is now open. It's been opened. We have possibility now. And if he implements it, and none of the horror stories happen, then it can happen here. And Ali, you need to listen back to that because he's a criminal apologist.
Well, the criminal apologists are also allowed to have views, but I will listen back some. I didn't hear that, but criminal apologists are perfectly welcome to call the show and express their view. It's a free society and a democracy. Thank you for all your calls and messages. This evening I'll be back tomorrow from 7. If you missed anything, download the app from your app store and do it now. Coming up at 1 on LBC.
You want?
But right now it's Ben Kentish.
Ali, thank you very, very much indeed. Hello and very good evening to you on the show.
A police manhunt has been launched for a second asylum seeker mistakenly freed from prison.
What a complete and utter shame. Just weeks after one person was accidentally released, today we learn that another one has been, and then another one still. Two separate manhunts underway tonight after a fraudster and a sex offender were both wrongfully let go from HMP Wandsworth. And if you're wondering how on earth that happened, it's not once but multiple times, you're not alone. It's the question that all of us are asking tonight. So what do you make of it? What's your response to these revelations? And who do you blame?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
Global newsroom at 10 o'clock. 2 men wrongly freed from South London jail, including one not reported for several days. Algerian registered sex offender Baron Kadour Sharif has a 6-day head start on the police. He's not an asylum seeker but is due to be deported for overstaying his visa. The other man released from HMP Wandsworth is 45-year-old fraud offender William Smith. Ian Aitchison is a former governor of Wandsworth and told LBC he's not surprised at what happened.
It's the prison, of course, that Daniel Khalife escaped from. We've been barred from seeing the results of the investigation into that report, but there are leaked reports and evidence that's emerged subsequently. I think that there were 81 different security failures that were identified in that prison, including prison officers asleep, prison officers looking at their phones, CCTV cameras that weren't present in blind spots.
Police have confirmed the breed of a dog which killed a 9-month-old baby in Robertson, South East Wales on Sunday was a 6-year-old XL bully and had been arrested before a ban took effect. No arrests have been made. The Green Party leaders told LBC that the election of a left-wing mayor in New York is part of a global turning point. Democrat Zoran Mandani has become the youngest and most liberal person to hold the office in decades. He's called himself Donald Trump's worst nightmare. Zach Polanski, the leader of the Green Party, believes it's part of a global shift away from the right.
What Zoran has really demonstrated is an absolute focus on affordability, on the mass inequality that is existing all around the world but is really existing right here in the UK. When we unite working class people, middle class people, small business owners, the unemployed, I'd say ultimately we all have so much more in common than the tax taken back.
An independent review into workplace sickness is warning the UK is sliding into an unavoidable crisis. 800,000 more people are out of work now due to health in 2019. Around 100 people and 30 dogs have been rescued from homes and cars in southwest Wales where flooding's triggered a major incident. Firefighters have seen 450 calls in 12 hours, mainly in Carmarthenshire. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed at 62 points at 97.77. The pound price went from 30 and €1.14. LBC weather, rain continuing in the north and west tomorrow. Bright spells and showers elsewhere. Highs of 17 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Darryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Ben Kentish.
Just got 10 p.m. Hello there. A very, very good evening to you this Wednesday night. Ben Kentish here with you on LBC 321. Great to have your company.
It's a sense of fair play, right? A sense of humour.
Prince Harry, that wasn't, by the way, publishes an essay about what he
loves about this country. And the word banter features prominently. But what do you think is so good about Britain? And when we talk about British culture and British values, which we do quite a lot, don't we? What do we actually mean? Talk about that a little later. And
this is not only how we stop Trump, it's how we stop the next one.
A stunning election win for 34-year-old left-winger Zoran Mamdani, the now soon-to-be next mayor of New York. He used his victory speech last night to left-wingers in Britain saying, if only we could have somebody like that here. But is that sort of socialist firebrand what you think this country needs? That to come.
Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. This is LBC.
First tonight, if you thought that the ongoing failure of consecutive governments to stop the boats coming across the English Channel was the starkest possible illustration of just how badly the British state as a whole is failing right now, then until pretty recently, I think you would have been right. It's a very obvious example, isn't it, of government after government, Prime Minister after Prime Minister, Home Secretary after Home Secretary saying, this is what we will do and this is what we are trying to do, and failing to do it. Not because they don't want it, not because they're not putting the effort in, because for some reason, the state, the British state, the institution responsible for our safety and our security just doesn't seem to be working in so many areas right now. And the failure to stop the boats coming here is a very, very obvious example. Perhaps the most obvious. Until that is the last few weeks, until the revelations in the last few days, and today in particular, about the state of our justice system, and specifically the fact that our prison system, designed of course for the very purpose of keeping people who need to be behind bars behind bars, is no longer even capable of doing it. I now think that is the most obvious illustration of the broken British state and the failure of the institutions that go on. Because fresh from the past 2 weeks ago, when a convicted sex offender was mistakenly released, today news of not one, but two further when they were supposed to be in custody. First, the confirmation this afternoon that a convicted sex offender in the UK illegally was released from HMP Wandsmouth in London last Wednesday. 24-year-old Algerian sex offender Brahim Khalid is now the subject of a man. But only as of yesterday. Only as of yesterday. Because only yesterday, it turns out, were the police informed. Which means there was a full 6 days between his wrongful release last Wednesday and anybody thinking it might be a good idea to tell the police. Then, as if that wasn't bad enough, another announcement a few hours later that it happened not once, but twice in the last week from the same prison. He's convicted of fraud. He's also now being hunted by police after his wrongful release. I can't recall seeing anything quite as breathtakingly incompetent as what we've seen in the justice system in the last couple of weeks. I understand the pressures on the people working in the prison. I understand the difficulties that people running them are facing. I appreciate it's a difficult job. It's thankless. My goodness. Releasing people over and over again. It's happened 262 times in the last year, by the way. Who aren't supposed to be released. How does that even happen? How does it happen once or twice? Let alone 262 times. The level of constant shambles of just complete and it's almost hard to know what to say about it. But I want your reaction to it. What do you make of it? What's your response to what we've heard today? And who do you hold responsible for them? Because there's a lot of pressure on this government, of course. But it didn't start with this government. But the underfunding and the cuts to the prison service has been going on since 2010. Who do you hold responsible? One man that a lot of people think about is David Lammy, of course, the Justice Secretary. Ultimately, the buck starts with him. He was at the Smash Box tonight for the Prime Minister's questions in his other role as Deputy Prime Minister standing in for Keir Starmer. And he faced the Shadow Defence Secretary James Carter, who asked him time and time again whether David Lammy could confirm whether or not any other prisoners have been wrongfully released since the Kabatu fiasco last month. Here's a flavour.
Can he reassure the House that since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison?
Get a grip, man. I know I'm the Justice Secretary. That's why I'm at the dispatch box, also as Deputy Prime Minister.
Your response to everything we've heard today. What do you make of it? How do you feel about it? And who do you hold responsible? 03456060973 is the number. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this evening. You can WhatsApp me on the same number or text me tonight if you prefer on 84850. We'll speak to a former prison inmate in just a moment. First though, Ben Maguire joins us, a Liberal Democrat and that party's shadow Attorney General. Ben, very good to have you on the programme. What a mess.
Evening, Ben. Yeah, what a sad state of affairs that we find ourselves in as a country, and obviously you've just outlined. I have to say, it's just so depressing to see. Here we are again. Obviously, a few weeks ago we had the Kabatu debacle. Now we're seeing again that two, I think, prisoners have been mistakenly released today. And I think almost the saddest thing of all, this is obviously a desperate situation. We've got two potentially dangerous criminals, well, one in this case of the two, but sort of potentially dangerous criminals being released mistakenly onto the streets. And possibly the saddest thing of all of this is that we're actually just scratching the surface of how broken our justice system is. Of course these are serious cases, of course this is desperate times to see our prison service not even able to keep the prisoners in the prison, which is kind of by definition the sort of reasons that they're existing. Basic level of incompetence, and yet you scratch the surface. Some figures that got passed to me earlier today. In the years 24 to 25, 260 prisoners were accidentally released, and that was an increase of around 100. So it's just a very, very desperate situation we find ourselves in. You rightly then pointed out that we can't put the whole blame, as much as some people might like to, we can't put the whole blame at David Lammy's door, although of course buck does stop with him, and I'm not happy with the way he's not been answer questions on this topic specifically. But we've of course got to look at recent years where our justice system, quite frankly, has been brought to its knees by years and years of mismanagement and years of...
So you think that the Conservative Party, the Conservative governments, Ben, are just as, if not more, to blame for this mess than the Labour?
I think it would be very difficult for anyone to just suddenly had this situation out of the blue, sort of one day, 1 week to the next. Clearly this has been years in the making, and I just really would urge the government now, and I certainly will be doing this in the House of Commons in the coming weeks and months, to properly and finally invest in our justice system. And this isn't just our prison system, by the way. We're talking about huge callbacks where many of my constituents, particularly serious cases, serious sexual offence victims, are actually deciding to drop out of the system now because they just can't get their day in court, they can't get their case heard because of these enormous court. What kind of country are we that we can't deliver that kind of justice?
Just on the specifics of this case, Ben, I mean, both of these prisoners released from the same prison, HMP Wandsworth. What should happen to the government of that prison when it comes to accountability?
Well, obviously there's very, very serious questions to answer. I mean, as you said yourself, Ben, this is the most basic level of incompetence, and obviously the buck stops in any prison with the governor, so I imagine she's got some very serious explaining to do on this.
Do they need to explain it, or do they just need to lose their job?
Well, I think, I was an employment solicitor in a previous life prior to getting elected last year, so I would say that due process is quite important here, and I would say that we need to find all the facts, and I think the thing I'd really emphasise on that, the reason we need to find all the facts is, don't forget, this happened just a few weeks ago with someone called Kabatu. We're assured by David Lammy that the facts would be looked into, there would be an investigation, and lessons would be learned, so that's what needs to finally happen.
And the government has said that investigation is underway, and they will try and expedite it.
They did that last time as well.
They did. Just lastly, Ben, on the government, I mean, a bit of a backlash today because David Lammy was asked repeatedly in Prime Minister's questions about whether or not any former prisoners since Kabatu had been released mistakenly, particularly those who were here claiming asylum. He didn't answer it 6 times. The government says tonight that's because he didn't have the full facts. He wanted to make a statement. He wanted the full facts clear. What do you make?
feel that Parliament has been misled? Do you think there's been a sort of a deceit by omission here? What do you make of it?
Yeah, absolutely. David Lammy is our Justice Secretary, and part of that role, part of that responsibility is to come in the House of Commons, come before MPs, and explain where mistakes have been made, what the government's doing, which I seriously hope they are doing something, because this is the third time we've seen such a serious breach in a matter of weeks. And as Liberal Democrats, we're actually calling for a recall of Parliament. As of today, we've gone into a reset. David Lammy before MP, so that we as elected representatives can ask the questions, some of the questions we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, with respect to that, I do mean this politely. It wouldn't be a parliamentary recess. And again,
this is a very serious issue, and I'm not saying that my inbox has been inundated tonight with constituents asking me questions, and I'm now not able to ask the Justice Secretary questions, so it does feel like a flaw in our system. We can't challenge him on this, and he's obviously ignored lots of the questions that were put to him today.
And your constituent's not alone asking the question, how on earth does this happen? Thank you, Ben White, Shadows General, Democrats MP for North Cornwall. Listening to that, David Shipley, former HMP Wandsworth inmate and investigative journalist who focuses on crime and justice. David, a very good evening to you. I think for me and most people listening to this news will come as an absolute shock. Most of us don't understand how this can happen. As someone who's been in prison and covers prisons extensively, I wonder if it was quite as much of a shock to you.
It was incredibly disturbing, but it wasn't a shock at all. I think, as we've just been discussing, 262 people were released in error last year. That's essentially one every working day. So this is happening all the time. Because Nadesh Kabati's release was so high profile, it's drawn attention to this, and now we're getting to spot more of these things. But this is just a symptom of how broken the whole prison system and the whole justice system is.
I get that it's broken. I get that, not enough goes into rehabilitation, prisons are overcrowded, and prison staff are overworked. But this is so basic. How on earth do you mistaken the release?
Well, this is what I was going to say. I don't actually think it's all the stuff we it's not even particularly the politicians' fault, I don't think, which might be I should say. I think the issue here is the leadership of the prison service. The governors and the senior managers collectively who have no real accountability. When they are criticised, they're very quick to throw the blame elsewhere. It's the fault of government, it's the fault of a lack of funding, it's old buildings, it's all this stuff. But actually, you're right. Holding prisoners for the duration of the sentence of release for one is your number one job. Not releasing people by mistake and knowing where people are is your job. And the fact they can't do it, quite frankly, it doesn't matter if this is incompetence or if it's something of malevolence. It's so bad that just like this one. So the previous guest was saying we need to go through a careful HR process. We don't think we do, but there need to be prosecutions of prison service managers who are failing so
not just sacking, it's not just firing, but active prosecutions.
I believe so. This is the prison service is actively making the public less safe because it is failing in its fundamental duties.
Yeah. And one of the most staggering facts about one of these cases is that the wrongful release was last Wednesday, and the police, David, is only including yesterday. For me, there's two explanations. Nobody realised for the best part of the week this man had been released, or they did realise and they chose to keep it quiet.
It's very hard to tell. I wouldn't be surprised given that no one knows the prisoner was missing for 6 days. And then someone came along and said, we need to take him to court, or the policeman.
Where's he gone? He's not here. Where's he gone? We released him last week.
Genuinely, but equally, I've seen situations where the prison service cases of corruption, company grade flag reports on the time to other places. And they are so desperate not to talk about things. They don't refer things to the police. I know of cases where they had a governor who was believed to be potentially corrupt, but certainly linked to organised crime, and they never referred that matter to the police. So they like to keep things within the service. They don't like to air their law in public, and they have been reluctant to speak to the police before. So I hope we'll get to find out soon. It's very disturbing.
Let's just talk finally about because both of these prisons are released from the same prison. It's the same prison where Daniel successfully escaped from less than 2 years ago. Is there a specific problem with HMP Wandsworth? Seems to me that there is.
Wandsworth is a particularly bad. It's not the only when I was there, they would regularly lose track of prisoners. They would have more prisoners or fewer prisoners in the jail than they thought they were supposed to. Prisoners would get lost between wings. So those basic controls have not been there. And actually, in 2019, someone escaped in exactly the same way as Daniel believed in it. And the prison recognised it had to bring in certain controls on checking under lorries and this sort of stuff. And yet, in 2023, when Khalif escaped, those checks were not happening. So the prison is so badly run, and it's had a succession of governors in that time. We had Graham Barrett and Katie Price, and now we've got Andy Davey. Yep. So there was an ongoing catastrophic failure.
So depressing, but this is what's going on. This is the reality. David Shipley from HMP Wandsworth, an investigative journalist. Would love to hear from you between now and 11 if you've worked in a prison. Maybe you do. Maybe you have done in the past. Or you've been in prison. Help us understand, the rest of us who aren't in those categories, how this could possibly happen. How a prisoner, two prisoners, could be released by mistake in the same prison in the same way. If you could shed any light at all on what leads to that happening, and what leads to that 262 times across the country in the last year. 03456060973, the number you need. And if you're like me, you don't have any insight, you don't really understand it. What do you make? What's your response to these revelations? And who do you hold responsible? Because it's easy just to say, oh, it's the Justice Secretary. It's a job about it. It's easy to say, oh, it's the Labour government. They've got to be bad. Yes, of course, they've got to take some responsibility, but they're not entirely to blame, are they? So who do you think is? 03456060973. Come to your thoughts on that right after this.
This is LBC.
At TfL, we're making tube journeys faster with signalling improvements underway on the Circle, District, Hammersmith and City and Metropolitan lines. And there's also the Elizabeth line, already giving you fast journeys across central London. That is how we're making the greener way to travel brighter for everyone. Such TfL improvement to the Mayor of London and TfL. Every journey matters. Elizabeth line is fast compared to other TfL lines. Greener than total estimated petrol and diesel car emissions.
There's always a lot going on. I'm on site, getting the job done, running the business too, payments, invoices, admin, all on me. But now with Tap to Pay, I can take payments there and then, and Sage sorts them afterwards. Everything's sorted in the background, so I don't spend hours doing it later. Magic.
Sage Copilot is built with over 40 years of experience helping British businesses like residual electrical contractors. That's more than artificial intelligence, that's authentic intelligence. Search Sage Copilot to learn more. T's and C's apply.
Octopus Energy. Great value and outstanding customer service. Recommended by which? 8 years running. Octopus Energy.
Managing your business is a big task. To then stay on top of the numbers as well, you're only human. That's why the Intuit QuickBooks AI-powered platform supports business growth as the number one recommended cloud accounting software. Intuit QuickBooks. Based on a survey of 506 UK accounting professionals verified at quickbooks.co.uk/profile.
Ben Kentich on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's 10:21. Ben Kentich here on LBC. Of course, coming in on just how you feel, what you make of the revelation today that two prisoners were released from HMP Wandsworth mistakenly. HMP Wakefield in Yorkshire, confirming tonight that a prisoner has died there this morning, with 3 men being arrested on suspicion of murder. This is a West Yorkshire police statement. At 8:25 a.m. this morning, police were called to HMP Wakefield to report that a prisoner had died in his cell. Detectives from Homicide and Major Inquiry Team attended and have launched an investigation. The man's death is currently being treated as suspicious. 3 men, all serving prisoners, have been arrested on suspicion of murder. So if you are in prison, they can't keep you safe. If you are a prison officer, they can't keep you safe. We've seen lots of attacks on them in recent months. And they can't even keep people behind bars anymore. The most basic task they have. Do nothing else. Just keep them locked up for the sake of the public safety. They can't even do that in 262 cases. So what is going on? And politicians will always get into
some extent they should. Like, for me, the people who cut the budgets, the prison budgets, by 24% between 2010 and now, they're responsible. They might be doing chummy podcasts and being the running to be the next ambassador to the US. They're the people. They're the people most to blame for the state of not just the prison service, but all our public services right now, if you ask me. But it's not, I mean, but even then you can't just look, as David would say, you can't just look at funding cuts and budgets and so on. You don't need to be adequately funded, you don't need to be adequately staffed to know that someone who's meant to be kept behind bars should probably be kept behind bars. So what is going on and who do you hold responsible? Dan's new caller in Stafford.
La jual legal è capola.
Thanks for accepting the call.
It's great to know. You used to work in a prison, is that right?
I've worked in many prisons for 15 years, 20 years.
In what capacity, for my answer?
So I worked in the country. Working governors, directors in their HR issues and staffing issues.
What do you want to tell people, Daniel, about the state of this country's prisons right now? What do we need to know?
I think there's some fantastic people that work in prisons, but there is absolutely, as one of your last callers just said, there's often a cover-up. There is often people who raise wrongdoing, and the senior managers in prisons and Ministry of Justice seem to want to cover that up. And I raised an issue on a young offender institution do not have the qualifications to run that prison, and we're talking kids. And they continued employing him as the governor of that prison, and if that came out into the public domain, that would be quite damaging, I would have thought.
So is the problem here incompetence, or is it more about corruption from your perspective?
I wouldn't. Corruption's a large word. I think there's incompetence. I think there is a lack of senior ownership of the actual issues. It's not a corruption issue. I don't think there's people out there trying to let people out, to be corrupt. So I don't think that's happening. I think there's
David, our last guest, was just saying he knows of governors that link to organised crime.
I think there's been cases of that, and I think when that has happened, in my experience, that's been investigated. That's not my experience, but I think there's a lot of incompetent people that work in senior positions in prisons that shouldn't do that.
How have they got they're that incompetent? Is it a case of no one else wants to do the job?
Well, I think it's the case, and if we go back to the Chris Grayling era in the Conservatives, where he completely annihilated the prison service, and it led to a race to the bottom in prison services, and it was no longer about rehabilitation, it was about just keeping and warehousing people. But I think one of the issues we've got now, and one of the things I wrote into your show about, was the fact that we've got an inspectorate of prisons that now report about care and compassion for prisoners, but it doesn't talk about the structure of the prison. Is the prison safe? Are we managing the process to make sure people don't get released in error? There's no reporting on that, and I think when you look at the Wandsworth report of 2025, there's no comment in there about actually was the reception processes safe, were the walls intact, really anything like that. It doesn't seem to be any focus on actually the accommodation aspect, and the fundamental is to stop people escaping.
But this is it. We're talking about potentially dangerous people. One of these two that's being hunted right now is a sex offender.
Absolutely.
It's not just about incompetence, is it? It's about public safety.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've worked in different categories of prisons, and I've worked in open prisons, which have probably been more secure at the moment than it sounds like Wandsworth is.
Yeah. If I was a criminal and I was I'd be out in a week.
Honestly, but they are grim places, and I remember working with one prison governor, and he always said though that no one in a dock ever asked for more time in prison. Absolutely.
Well, they probably do now because they know they'll be let out in a few months mistakenly.
But 10 years ago, I remember, if someone was released in error or there was an escape or an abscond,